Welcome to this episode of Intellectual Catholicism. Today, I am here with my good friend Kyle Whittington, has a YouTube channel by the same name, and today we're here to talk about the power of fraternity. And so I know that Kyle, you wanted to kind of take the reins on this one. So, Bill, first, before we get into the subject, how have you been?
I've been good. It's been a little crazy. If you guys are subscribed to my channel, you probably will see that content has not been coming out as regular. We just had a baby, and then like 2 months after we moved, or after we had the baby, we moved to Steubenville. So we're still kind of getting settled in. Things are a little hectic, but it's a good kind of chaos because meeting new people, making friends, and living in community. It's a really nice change of pace.
And Kyle, is this your studio in your house, or is this another room? Where you at right now?
I am in the Numa co-working space in Steubenville, Ohio, which is great for remote workers. We have a phone booth. I'm touching both ends of it right now. So yeah, so it's just for like conference calls and stuff like that. It's kind of soundproofed. It's just kind of nice for doing stuff like this. So it's
Mm.
uh it's it's a cool space. So actually, like, hey, if you guys are looking to move and you want to build some of this fraternity here, Steubenville is not a bad choice. I actually highly recommend it. So it's yeah.
Yeah, Kyle, speaking of fraternity, I mean, there's a lot that you want to say with this. And so maybe let me let you lead the conversation now, and we'll
Okay.
just see where we can go from there.
Yeah, for sure. I do want to plug the event that I'm doing. Is it cool if I do that?
Oh, yeah, go right ahead.
Okay, cool. So I believe it's already in the description. If not, I'm sure it'll end up there eventually. It's coming this July 12th through the 14th in Steubenville, Ohio at Chesterton Cigar Lounge. I'm going to be hosting a Catholic Creator Conference. The main purpose of this, we don't have any speakers booked or anything like that, but we're going to have Catholic creators. Myself, I'm going to be there. Drew the Catholic, Swan might be there. I know as a college student, things are not always certain for you, but you know, uh, it's going to be a great time. It's going to give us a chance to interact face to face because, as
Mhm.
anybody who has spent more than 15 minutes in the Catholic apologetics sphere, whatever, there's a lot of fighting. There's a lot of headbutting going on, and the conversations just typically are so much friendlier when they happen within strangling distance. And I just want to try to close that gap a little bit, get some people here face to face, talk to each other, become actual friends, not just faces on a screen. Swan, you and we've hung out in person twice now, and I feel like I got to know you way better than I ever could have through a camera or whatever, especially just seeing you and just the absolute mean machine that you are. And that's something that doesn't really come across on a camera, especially, intellectual Catholicism. This is a very serious channel. You want to take it seriously. You don't want to be spamming Thanos gifts all over the place. Um, but but yeah.
Mhm.
So anyway, that we are limiting it to creators, and there's only 25 spaces available. So there's an application. I'll review your application. If I think you're a good fit, I'll send you a ticket to, or send you a link to go purchase the tickets. $25. It literally only pays for the venue. I'm not making a cent off of this. In fact,
Mm.
it's costing me money. So that's just to help cover the costs of it. So if you're interested, check it out. And yeah, so fraternity, a lot of people, especially if they found their way to your channel, especially my channel, it means that they spend probably a lot of time on YouTube. I've already kind of alluded to the infighting and the stuff that I myself am guilty of. I'm not going to pretend like I'm an innocent and I'm the paragon of virtue here, because even if I you don't see it on camera, there's a lot of times where I've got this built up anger towards people that I've never even spoken to, and what can I do about this? And it's like all I can do is basically just sit in my chair, cope and seethe, and that's not building the kingdom. That's just building resentment. And then even worse is that whenever you go into the real world and you talk to someone who's familiar with the YouTube scene, and they find out that you're allied with this individual or this individual, and then that's more cause for fighting. And I do think that's a problem, especially when you find out that those two people, those sides that people have drawn, those two people are actually really good friends with each other. You know, they talk to each other on the phone occasionally, and I've seen that happen. And you know, it's like the followers of this guy, followers of this guy, those two guys get along. The followers, you know, are always at each other's throats. And you know, I've heard great stories of friendships between Protestant apologists and Catholics apologists. But you know, when you see them in a debate, you would think that they were the bitterest of enemies. But meanwhile, the following weekend, they're going to go hunting together or something like that. And I really, really think that this is something that the YouTube algorithm, Facebook algorithm, you know, you mentioned this yesterday in your stream. So this is kind of a sequel and building off of that, of it kind of rewards bad behavior. You want to, oh, I'm going to destroy this guy. And even myself, in some of the content that I've previously made, I remember thinking to myself, it wasn't, I want to lovingly and charitably correct this person. The thought that I would have is, I want to kick this person's teeth in. And that's not helpful. Like, okay, I punch this guy in the face. What's he going to want to do? Well, he's going to want to punch me back. He's not going to take the hit and go, oh, maybe that guy had a good point. It's causes infighting, and quite frankly, it causes a scandal in that, you know, a non-believer, an atheist is going to look into this and go, oh, well, how about them Christians? Look at that. They can't even agree on some basic stuff. They don't care about the Catholic Protestant divide. They just see Christians too. So that's why I am thinking that, or why I'm saying and trying to push the fact that we do need to love each other. We do need to get along. And these owning and dunking on everybody, it's just kind of embarrassing whenever we're trying to beat people over the head and the stick that we're using to beat them with is Jesus Christ. You know, we're beating them with the crucifix, and it's just, oh my gosh, like what an absolute sacrilege that is. And I think that's something that we do need to take seriously, and you know, consider our actions, consider our words. You know, Jesus tells us that, you know, we'll be held accountable for every careless word that we utter. And you know, how much more could that be amplified whenever our words are more or less permanently recorded in either a video or a comments section. So this isn't just a creator thing. This goes for you, dear viewer, as well, because you know, you're going to have to account for those words too at your judgment. And you know, I think there's something that we could do a little bit to encourage each other to virtue a little bit, and maybe not be at each other's throats so much. So anyway, I've been talking for a little bit. I'll get your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, there's so much that I basically agree with everything that you said. That um, we need to be able to see that the person that we were talking to is a human being, and what that really means. I mean, I think that's so much even just part of like Christ's own ethic. When you read the New Testament, his whole thing is to get you to see, like, if we take seriously the idea that our neighbor is a human being created in the image of God, what does that actually mean for the way that we conduct ourselves? And, you know, yesterday I mentioned in the stream that a lot of people think that like virtue is just a moral thing, but intellectually I can do whatever I want, right? I can, I can
Right.
straw man, I can do, no, but it's like, no, virtue applies not only to the moral life, but the intellectual life as well. And so I think the conference that you've organized is just it's going to be so important, because I think that especially like Catholic scholars, biblical scholars, philosophers, they all have conferences that they go to in order to ensure that they can like meet in person and maintain good relationships. It's a great way to connect. But I think the same thing needs to happen in for Catholic content creators. I don't know if there's any conference really out there for Catholic
There's not.
content creators. Yeah. And so I think this is filling up a major gap in the community that we as content creators, we need to be able to actually be together, hold each other accountable, but also have friendships with each other. I think that's so important. So Kyle, there's so much that I agree with you with on this particular matter. And I'll say this too. I think that, you know, for some people, they might say, and I saw there was a comment in the live stream that, there's some people saying like, oh, I have the crusader complex, right? Not I in particular, but just they, right? They were admitting
Oh,
that they
same,
have the crusader complex, right?
same. That's
And,
me.
and the thing is like, it might get you some wins in the short term, but in the long term, as like things get more sour and people look back, right, and they think about the effect that somebody's content has on the internet, on the online community, I think in the long term, that's not going to last. It's not going to be
Right.
good because I mean, it's kind of like fast food. You might get
Yeah.
something that's really good for the short term, but then it's just going to kind of not be so good in the long term, right? You want something that's going to last.
Yeah, so I normally I don't name drop whenever I'm criticizing people, although I think this guy's going to be cool with it. There's one clown online, and if you look at some of his stuff, he goes by the name of Kyle Whittington, and he did this series called Low Hanging Fruit, and it was exactly that. It was the fast food of apologetics. I did no study. It was all off the cuff. I made it into a drinking game, and looking back on it now, it's just like, yeah, I mean, okay, don't get me wrong, it was fun, it was
Mhm.
funny. I never once got a single message, a single email that said, "Kyle, thank you so much. Your work, your this series here has deepened my faith in Christ." And or, "Oh, you really helped me get over my objections to Catholicism," or something like that. That didn't happen a single time. And especially if you're a content creator, I'm sorry, but if you're doing the right thing, you should be getting this kind of feedback from people like, "Oh, dude, thank you so much." Because usually when people are changed, they want to show gratitude,
Mhm.
and never once. So it is possible there might be some silent person out there. Personally, I kind of doubt it. So, you know, I didn't talk to any of those people except for, as New Gloff is in here, Kevin Non-Tradicath, which Kevin's a sweetheart. I love Kevin to
Mhm.
death. And he was the only person who ever asked for the low-hanging fruit treatment. But even then, like after that, it was followed up with a conversation with Kevin. But personally, Kevin, I'm not going to say his last name. He's a sweet guy. I
Mhm.
love that guy to death. In fact, like, I need to get with him because I said, like, "You're not coming onto my channel again until it's in person, so you have to come to Steubenville, and we're gonna get to hang out and actually, like, be bros." So that's, yeah, so stop. I guess I just want to encourage people to, like, stop trying to just dunk on each other. Even with that off the cuff answer that I would give, it's like, I'm making something that's gonna be on the internet, presumably forever. Um, but yeah, it's yeah, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah,
I'm gonna let you talk
and
a little bit.
right, I think one concern that people might have though is like what I'm saying is everybody needs to be like a scholar, right? And obviously like
Right.
there are some people who they have a voice and they want to express it, right?
Mhm.
But they don't have the time to read Richard Price, okay? They don't
Right.
have the time to read, all, commentaries and ancient Jewish texts. They don't have the time for that, right? And that's okay. I think
Mhm.
that what we need to do, I think what everybody can do, no matter where you are, right, is virtue. So you can make the funny content, you can have a good time, have good laughs and all that. But so long as you do it in a way that is charitable, and maybe you put like caveats in that, of course, like I'm not saying all Protestants believe this, but here's this particular Protestant who, I mean, I think that there's a way in which you could do low hanging fruit without it being like, bad. And
Sure.
Yeah, right. And so, yeah, I don't want people to think that everybody has to be like very serious and scholarly. I think that there's a lot of value in how different people do apologetics. So for me, I have my particular way of doing it. Some people like to make, animate videos, cartoons. Some people like to do like comedy. I think all those are acceptable. I think there's always though that question of, being careful, especially if you use humor, right? Because humor is very powerful actually. And
Mhm.
you can use it for good or for ill. So, I mean, that's just something that I'd say there, right? I don't want
Yeah.
everyone to kind of uh, become just, I'm not saying everyone become me, right? And even for myself, I'm trying to correct myself. I'm trying to adjust and do things differently. So I am not the paragon. And as you said too, you're not pretending to be an exemplar of virtue. I think all of us are
Right.
working at it. Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's a few people that I would say that are doing extremely well. Uh, but well, I'll just say, like, I'm pretty sure he won't mind the compliment. Scott Hahn,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
one of
Mhm.
the most gracious guys I've ever met. Um, and obviously but he's also a scholar. But I do want to kind of call back to the one of the main points that I've got in my notes here is whenever we're going out and doing these things, one of the problems with the low hanging fruit, I've got David is in the chat saying like, well, that really helped me vent. And like you said, there is value there. So I don't want to say that it's completely worthless and whatnot. But the person who made those videos, they're not going to, they're going to watch that video and they're going to think that I'm a jerk. And to a certain extent, they're correct. And that's one of the big problems. And I know it's a cliche, but I think it's very true. And I found this in my own experience, in my leadership journey and whatnot. But people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah.
I'm making a point to not name any names. There's a certain apologist online, and he is the most triumphalist, arrogant, insulting guy that I think I've ever met. I could not care less what he has to think, because I don't think that he cares for my good. I legitimately think that he is just arguing, and it's just so that he can beat me and prove that he's superior. And quite frankly, man, I got 5 kids. I ain't got time for that. So, it's just, so the danger though is thinking that like you and I are above that and we could never be that. Whenever in fact, like that danger is always there. So we always need to be on guard on this. And I do have to give you a compliment, because Swan, I think you've done an excellent job at remaining above that, not getting into the mud and the muck of all of this, and always, being charitable, including a time that most people don't know about because that recording never saw the light of day, calling me out of saying like, yeah, Kyle, this ain't good. This is going to go to the trash bin where it belongs. And, and I really appreciate that too, because honestly, that was a huge direction change for me. And I think getting the relationship up is really going to help you reach that person better. Now, does that mean that we're going to stop the low-hanging fruit from coming our way? No, of course not. However, the people that are spouting it to you, one of the things that I'd recommend, actually, there's somebody in the chat right now that I recently gave this advice to. Not going to name this person, but the first thing you need to do is just understand them, hear them, hear where they're coming from. They might be saying like, Catholics worship Mary or other such things like that. But if you don't understand what they're saying, how could you possibly engage with them? How could you respond if you're going to be just responding into something with something, or responding to something that you think that they're saying, but they're not really saying? And then that's when you get two people talking past each other. And, at that point, you're creating more heat than light.
Yeah. I mean, this is something that there's a lot that I could say there. I think the first thing is that people underestimate the power of when someone feels heard. Once they feel that they've been heard, they're willing to actually listen to you. Yes. I think that, we underestimate that. I think people also underestimate the power of kindness. And I don't want to sound like a Care Bear here, but I really do think that if you do show someone kindness and you do your part to make them feel heard, they will give you more room to like make your argument, to articulate your position. Because I won't name any names, but back when I was in my undergrad, there was a girl that I knew who was like pro-choice and like very, very adamantly pro-choice. And we got into a conversation about abortion, and rather than just like going right into my philosophical arguments for the moral dignity of the embryo and the substance of human persons, I just like listened to her. And at the very end, I just said, yeah, I mean, like, I respect you. I can see how you got from point A to point B. I personally disagree. And obviously, like, I think it's a grave, deep moral disagreement. It's serious. But she had this interesting reaction where she said, like, wow, I actually felt heard by you. Like, I was expecting you to just get mad at me, to yell at me, or to like give this argument for, as this pro-life man. But I'm like, no, I mean, I think if you are able to kind of be different than what they're expecting, then there's a way in which, I mean, you kind of put the shields down, right? They put the shields down and you're willing, and they're more able to listen to what you're saying because they trust you and they've established that. There was something else I wanted to say, but I mean, I like how I actually like, let me put up from the chat, Shepherdess, who says, the art of listening is an act of kindness. Listening neither affirms nor condemns, it just listens. And I think that's a great point there. especially in
Yeah.
our online work. Mhm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and this is the other thing I was gonna say, like, also, um, I don't wanna pretend either that, like, I've never gotten angry about some of the things that go on online. I don't wanna pretend as if I haven't also felt the crusader complex within myself,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Because, like, I mean, from my conversion from being Baptist to being Catholic, I had to deal with people who mistreated me, who said all kinds of things about me, and it's very easy in that context to lean into your resentment and just unleash it, right? Especially, like,
Right.
I mean, you could view this as a great deposit of knowledge, or you can view these books as ammunition.
Yep.
That's how easy it can all switch up. And so I have to constantly slow down and make sure that I'm not letting myself get into that spirit of resentment.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that Crusader complex. Whenever I watched that, like I felt particularly called out there. I know you were thinking about me specifically and
No, no,
literally
no,
no
no.
one else.
Mm,
So, but yeah, no, that's oh man, I had something too, and I totally it
well,
is yeah. But hey, oh, Braden's here. That's cool.
yeah, yeah. And New Gloff, he just said, to be able to say I agree or I disagree, I must be able to say I understand. Mortimer Adler. I think that's a good
Mm,
quote to share. Mhm.
yeah. Yeah, no, and okay, so here's the point that I was going to make, is turning the other cheek. You
Mm,
know, that doesn't mean always lay down, never defend yourself, just do that. But
yeah.
in those times when you are being attacked, turning the other cheek is one of the most effective things you can do because if somebody punches you in the face and you punch them in the face, well, okay, now it's a full-on brawl and it's going to end with both of you in the hospital and actually really and truthfully neither of you won. But if somebody
Mhm.
punches you in the face and you look back at them and can say sincerely, I forgive you. Now, I love you. Can we talk about this, please? That's such a striking, unnatural, supernatural thing to do. That's something that, okay, now you're making progress. That's going to speak louder than any of these. You've got all of the church fathers memorized and can quote it line by line, and
Right.
you can dismantle everything, whatever. But it's that I care about you. Let's do this now. Um, Yeah. So anyway, I want to let you add on to that because you're the
Mhm.
biblical scholar here or
Well, it
in
reminds me
training.
it yeah, it reminds me of Paul says. Paul says, if I don't have love, then I'm just a banging cymbal, right?
Mhm.
Like my voice, my preaching, everything is meaningless if I don't have love. And I mean, that's precisely what makes Jesus so troubling for us. It's that, he calls us to love our enemies. And in this world today, what we want is power, right? We want to be strong, especially us guys. We want to be strong and present ourselves in such a way where our community feels confident because we're confident. But I think that when you love somebody else, you become vulnerable. You're willing to let them finish their sentence. You're willing to let them finish their argument. You're willing to absorb that point, that uh, objection, and really say, maybe there's something there, or I'm going to take you seriously. And I think there's actually more power in doing that than just striking back, like you were saying before. And even,
Right.
I think about, when Jesus talks about turning the other cheek. Uh, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that you can interpret that, but the primary way in which I think people have interpreted it is that you don't immediately retaliate, right? Because
Right.
what you're ultimately concerned with is that person being able to see the face of God. And
Mhm.
if you strike them back immediately, then all they see is an enemy, right? And then the cycle continues. But there's a sense in which if you refuse to strike back, if you refuse to go in the way of the world or what's expected, think about the story before of the girl that I talked to about the issue of abortion with. When she saw that I wasn't doing what she was expecting, it kind of opened up an entirely different world for her. And so I think too, like with Christ saying, love your enemies, turn the other cheek, he's trying to get you to do the thing that's gonna open the eyes of your enemy to the face of God,
Right.
to a world
Right.
that they didn't think was even possible.
Yeah. Dude, that's some solid stuff. And I do have to confess, whenever you said you have to let them finish their sentence, it took every ounce of my being to not just interrupt you right then and there. But anyway, so no, but that's really good. And a lot of that comes with just humility too. You know, I guess for me, as an uneducated hick from Oklahoma, it's really easy for me to go, well, I might be wrong. I've been wrong a lot in my life, but just
Mm,
have some of that humility in listening and assuming, Dale Carnegie has this saying, and I try to remember it. It doesn't matter who you're talking to. Every single person on this planet is your superior in something.
mhm.
And, whenever you remember that, and you're just not going to know what that thing is until you get to know them and get to understand them a little bit more. So, and then on top of that, too, even if you're dealing with some of these people who are, the most vitriolic, they're just so angry, they're filled with spite, whatever, there's still something in them that is so valuable, that is so lovable, that it made Jesus Christ want to die for them.
Mhm.
Try to figure out what that is.
Yeah.
Try to figure out what that is that would say, what is so great about you that I should give my life for you as well? And that doesn't mean like, oh, this person's a jerk, now go jump on a grenade for them. That's not what I'm saying.
Mhm.
But just trying to find that value, that just helps make it easier to show kindness to these people, is remembering what Jesus did for them as well as he did for you.
Yeah.
Oh, Haley says she has lots of questions for me. Oh no.
Yeah, well, yeah, and for those of you in the chat just feel free to, post your questions or your comments, and I think Kyle and I will look at them in about maybe, 3 to 4 minutes when we hit the 30-minute mark. How about that?
Okay, yeah. Um,
Mhm.
so, but on the subject of humility, I do
Yeah.
have this quote on my notes. I wanted to get that out. Was um, it's a apparently, I never had one of Dr. Hahn's classes, but this is what I've heard people say that he said a lot, is that God opposes the proud even when they're right. So it's yeah. Anyway, so what was the time frame you were suggesting again? Like we take questions at 30 minutes, or just kind of go
Ye
back and forth a little bit?
Yeah, because we're about to hit the 30-minute mark, so I think once
Okay.
we hit 30, I think we'll be ready to take questions and comments from people.
Okay,
Um,
sweet.
yeah,
Reminder
but
that
did you
Swan's a broke college student, so super chats are definitely appreciated.
Yeah,
But anyway, go
Kyle,
ahead.
is there anything else on your agenda that you wanna talk about, or
Another thing is just like fraternity in real life. The faith was never meant to be lived online.
Yeah.
Obviously, we bring our faith to the online sphere, but I've ran into so many people, and sometimes it's like through no fault of their own, but like the only community that they have is in a Discord server. And on a certain extent, it's like, oh, thank God for that Discord server, because I feel like if this wasn't here, you would have nothing.
Right.
But that's a problem, that the Discord server there is a band-aid solution. You need the overhaul. You need to find that community. Even the holiest men who have ever lived, like Saint Benedict, he still lived in community.
Mhm.
So we still that. Oh wow, thanks. Okay, there's super chat. But anyway,
Right.
they so get that community, build that fraternity, because there's some. This is okay. Now this is me shooting off the cuff from a psychological standpoint. I'm not a psychologist. Feel free to dismiss me without cause or good reason, whatever. But God designed us to be survivors. Whenever there's an unknown, we always replace that unknown with fear, with stay away from it. This is why the dark is so scary to us at like such a primal, like animal level. We always want to know everything, which that does need to be kept in check. We don't want to fall into the vice of, unbounded curiosity. But there's a problem with just text. Text
Yeah.
is tone deaf. You can tell whenever I say, dang, Swan, you're super bad today. That's a good job. Good job, man. Or something like that. Now, if it's like, I don't know. I said bad because I don't know. It's first thing, whatever. But I
Mhm.
could say like the same compliment is just like, hey, Swan, nice glasses, versus nice glasses. They're the exact same words, but it can be taken differently. So that's why I want to say, get face to face, especially like stuff like this. It's a good band-aid solution. You're in Massachusetts, I'm in Ohio.
Mhm.
It's awkward. We're making it work, but you can see that I'm over here flailing like a madman while I'm talking. And but it's so much better than if I just do that, because I write like a serial killer. So if you're getting messages from me on Discord, they probably come across as very cold because I'm probably just trying to communicate as efficiently as possible, and that leaves a lot to the imagination and can sometimes come across as hostile. So get more human interactions. Don't
Yeah.
just do these long back and forth, or there's some great writers out there that Dr. Hahn, especially if you've ever read any of his books, the humor is littered throughout there. The man is definitely a dad.
Oh.
But so like, okay, he's good at it. I'm not. So that's why I want to try to keep these more serious conversations in person. And like I said, it's fantastic too if you can have that conversation within strangling distance, because then there's that natural barrier there that's going to keep you polite just out of want for your own natural safety. Anyway, so I think that's like the last point that I really, really wanted to get to, but we're at
Yeah.
the 30 minutes now, so let's take some questions.
Yeah, and I'll just say before I move on, hold on, let me get something ready. Okay, because you mentioned that I'm a meme lord, so I'll get a meme ready. But before I get to the meme, well, actually, I'll just do it now because you kept on talking about like what is it, being within strangling distance of each other, and
Yes.
every time you said that, I just couldn't help but think of this meme.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, but yeah, I
Yeah.
wanted to say too that one of the problems with like things like the Crusader complex or other things along those lines is that if you think about the new atheists, right? The new atheists had the Crusader complex. I mean, it's littered throughout where they felt like they were on this kind of moral mission against religion and against all religious belief. And then for a time, like, you had young, edgy atheist teenagers who were, really excited for this kind of stuff, eating up Hitchens, Dawkins, Dennett, and Harris. But then as time has passed, their legacy hasn't fared that well, I think,
Right.
in terms of like in academic circles and in what people want today. I mean, I think in the wake of the new atheists have come figures like Jordan Peterson, where people are actually interested in religion. They want to have dialogues about religion. They want to see what they can appreciate about these religious ideas and their wisdom. And so if we try and do like the new atheists, but we're Catholics, I don't know, not the new Catholics, but whatever we would say for
Yeah.
that kind of movement, then sorry, I just saw something in the chat that made me laugh. If we try to do that same tactic, it's gonna backfire. And I mean, I have a sense with some of the streams that are going online right now, there might be some Protestants who are attempting to do basically like the new atheist move against us Catholics online. I know that that might sound like conspiracy theory, but I have a sense of where it might be going. I think these figures are more fringe, so they're not going to be part of the mainstream. But it's just something that makes me concerned. How can we avoid the new athe atheization of the online apologetic scene? And before I move on to the chat, I just want to say to New Gloff for the super chat. Like, no, I really appreciate it and thank you so much. I mean, I think that's the biggest super chat I've ever gotten in a chat. So, I mean, that means a lot to me. So, thank you. I appreciate it. All right, let's go to the top here. And if you see any questions that you want to talk about, Kyle, you let me know.
Okay. Well, let's see here. So Haley had a question, which was first, why? I don't know what you're getting at. But let's see here. Should I stop my YouTube? So up there, 527. Should I stop my YouTube comment conversations from New Gloff?
Yeah.
No. Next question. No. So no, you shouldn't stop them. Okay, because the YouTube comment section, for the absolute cesspool that they are, there's still a mission field. You can still try to reach somebody. Your batting average is going to be awful. You're going to strike out more than you actually hit here.
Yeah.
So, but as long as you're doing it with virtue, with love, check your intentions, because I can't tell you how many times that, well, you type out this whole comment out of spite, and then you read it and you go, that comment never needs to see the light of day. It needs to go. It needs to go, and it needs to stay go. But yeah, so if you can keep yourself from getting angry with the text on the screen that is actually another human person, then yeah. Or if you find yourself that that's too great of a temptation, what do we say at the
Yeah.
end of every act of contrition? To avoid the near occasion of sin. If it's a near occasion of sin for you, stay away from it. If you're prone to wrath, like me, then stay away from it and whatnot. But if you can do it with charity and kindness and gentleness, do that. But I would still say try to make them a friend before. Try to understand them as best as you possibly can before you start pushing on them. Because one problem that I've run into a lot is that I'm a terrible writer. I'm not good at communicating my ideas. So, and sometimes I'm not a very good speaker. There was one time my wife and I were arguing about something, and she repeated the words that I said right back to me, and I realized how awful they were.
Mm.
And my only response was, I can see why you would think that that's what I believe, because that's exactly what I said.
Mm.
And so sometimes this person, give them some grace a little bit. Their ideas are probably far more developed than what they're able to communicate on the screen, just like you, just like me. So keep that in mind, and just try to make the direction to be more friendly, make them a friend, and not I'm going to demolish them. Or if you have my attitude of I cannot let this error stand because if I don't respond, they're going to think that there's not a response.
Yeah.
And you know what? If they do believe that, that's their problem. That's not yours.
Right.
So if you can't respond kindly, then can't say anything nice and don't say anything at all.
Yeah, I mean that's the problem of pride, where you don't want them to have the last word. You want to make sure that you stamp their position out. I would say to New Gloff as well. I think there are two tactics that you can take, and maybe you can develop other ones. But one is to just, if you see a comment and the question, is one that you can really competently answer, then write out your answer. Be very calm. Be very deliberate about it. Maybe if it's a paragraph or two, go ahead, right, and then post it, and then just see how they respond. And if they respond by just kind of mocking, or even sometimes people like ask questions. I think this is called, was it like sea lioning, or they like ask a bunch of questions and they try to seem sincere, but they're really just trying to like ask questions for the sake of questions. There's a way that you can tell when somebody's being sincere with their questions or not. But like if you post that comment, you can use that as kind of a litmus test where like you did the hard work, and you tried to remain calm, hopefully, in your comment. And you just maybe at the end of the comment say, what do you think? Or I'd love to hear your thoughts. Or maybe that would sound too sarcastic, but like, what do you think? Right. That's one way. The other way that you could, and use that as a test. The other thing that you could do is reply to the person by just asking some clarifying questions and just being very gentle about it. And once you kind of feel like, okay, I think this person feels heard, I feel like I understand what they're saying, then maybe you could get into like the more direct responses. Maybe write out that paragraph. So those are kind of like two ways that you could navigate the online scene. But I will say that if you do that for a long time, like just debating in the YouTube comment section, that will drive you insane. It will drive you mad.
Yeah, it'll kill you. It'll kill your soul. It's once again, the faith was never meant to be lived out online. So yeah, I do want to add one more thing. So whenever it comes to YouTube comments specifically, I will always, because I used to, I haven't been doing this as much lately, but reading comments on the Council of Trent, one thing that I would always, Trent Horn's channel, not the Church Council, I would always look for accusations.
Yeah.
If an accusation of malintent or something like that, the moment I see one of those, I move on. That's not worth engaging, because you're just trying to do this. I mean, what's the response to that? Nuh-uh. Obviously, there's no trust there anyway. There's no reason to engage. And I might be wrong, but especially when you're dealing with thousands of comments, you just got to pick your battles and choose. So, and that's also something we need to be on guard for too, is don't ever accuse somebody's intentions. I don't think that that's ever an appropriate thing to do. Somebody say, oh, you're being deceptive. No, I'm not being deceptive. I'm just stupid. I'm just wrong. Okay. Like, and that might just be that person too. I don't want to say that they're stupid. I'll call myself stupid. I'm not gonna call them stupid. They might just be genuinely mistaken. So give them some grace. Don't ever just like impugn their intent. That's not appropriate for a Christian to do.
Yeah, and just one thing really quick too is that, like, in terms of human psychology, I forget what they call this phenomenon exactly, but it's like if you present somebody counter evidence or counter arguments, it can actually make them dig more into their own worldview. I forget what they call this, but like I don't know if you've heard about this phenomenon, but it's really dangerous because you have to present counter evidence and arguments in the right way. So try to get the shields down so that you can have that fair conversation.
Right.
Or else what you do is if you just barrage somebody with a bunch of quotes, then they actually feel like they need to dig in and double down. And that's really
Right.
risky.
Right. Well, and like at the end of the day, like if anybody here believes that they're smarter than every planet or every Protestant on the planet, stop. You're wrong.
Mhm.
There are Protestants out there who are far more familiar with the church fathers than you,
Yeah.
than with church history than you. And I'm not saying that they're correct, but I am saying that they probably have better arguments than you specifically do. And that's not something that you want to come in half cocked and whatnot. So, but anyway, yeah,
Okay, Wesley Novak asks, should all Catholics move to Steubenville? Kyle, what's your answer?
no. Should a lot of Catholics move to Steubenville? Yes, absolutely. This town peaked in population about 80,000. We're currently sitting at about 18,000. So what that means is you can buy a house for a grand total of like $5,000. You, dear
Wow.
viewer, could turn this crack house into a crack home. But no, Steubenville is fantastic. If you guys are desperately grasping for community, it's here. I can tell you it is here in spades. Now, I'm crazy. So within just a couple of months from being here, I've already planned events. I've hosted parties. I'm going to be doing a surprise birthday party for somebody here in town this Sunday. I hope they don't watch this channel. But they, yeah, it's so good in my neighborhood. What the house that we selected, which hopefully Swan you'll be at one day. When I was looking at the houses, the house that we got wasn't anything special. It would work though. I knew that it would work. But whenever when we were standing out in the driveway, and I was still thinking like, yeah, I'd still prefer something cheaper. The neighbor came home, and I was talking to her, and her and her 5 kids got out and ran inside or went to go play outside, whatever. She
Mhm.
gave me a very stern warning of, if you're going to live here, you have to be okay with children playing in your front yard.
Hmm.
But basically warning me, my kids are going to play in your front yard, and I'm not going to try and stop them. And to me, that was a huge selling point because also as a father of 5,
Yeah.
I want my kids to play outside with all sorts of neighbor kids, and my kids now have really good friends in the neighborhood, and that's something that we're kind of missing. So if you can make it work, there are not many good paying jobs here. We have no like industry. We have services, and we have secondary and tertiary goods. So clothes, whiskey, beer, cigars, stuff like
Mhm.
that. We're not like producing textiles, or all the steel workers are losing their jobs and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
it's great for me as a remote worker. I work here at Numa. It's a great situation. It's kind of nice because I take money from my full-time job and basically pump it directly into the Steubenville economy, which is doing good. But yeah, so if you're a remote worker, I do highly recommend Steubenville, though, come for a visit first, see if it's the right fit for you. It might not be, but I love it.
That's great, Kyle. All right. David Supina asks, how can we reform Catholic communities? Because when I go to parishes, they seem to assume the community already exists and it just must be served, other than move to Steubenville. Kyle.
So I'm from the South. I am from Southeast Oklahoma. So I was heavily influenced by the Baptists.
Mhm.
But I do think that the Baptists have a few things right, namely eating. Like, have a potluck.
Oh, yeah.
I used to plan a ton of events in St. Louis when we lived there. Swan, you were at one of them because you were the
Mhm.
keynote speaker. But have free booze, have free food there. If the church doesn't want to pay for it and you've got a good job and you can spare the money, you pay for it. Find a group of guys who are willing to pitch in for it, because we're Catholic. We love drinking. Nothing gets a group of men together like free beer or free
Mhm.
whiskey. So you can start doing that, get these guys together, unite over a good drink. Chances are your priest is also a fan of these things. Start planning these events. A lot of times I have found that if you go to ask your priest, can we do this thing? Now, and you gotta be very careful on how you present this, because if you do it in the yada form, such of like, hey, you ought to do this. Nope, nope, nope. You're volunteering him for the priest for work, or whoever's there. You're volunteering them for work. That's not how this works. You plan the event. You decide, hey, I would like this for this to happen. Most priests, their checklist is this going to end me up in front of a news camera? That answer needs to be no.
Mhm.
Is this going to cost money? This one could be a yes, but if you can get that, it's like, no, it's not going to cost any money. And then, is it going to cause extra work? Are you going to, like, after the party, are you guys going to have a big mess? If
Mm.
you can cover those three things, chances are your event is going to be greenlit, and you will be, the priest is going to say, yeah, do it. So, but sometimes, the end of the day, people have to leave their houses. They have to show up to have an actual community. And last time I checked, and at least in all the developed countries, kidnapping people out of their houses is illegal. So you can't force them there, but you can make it enticing. And as
Yeah.
things go, these other community leaders will just kind of naturally rise up, and you will naturally get help most of the time. But, obviously, depending on where you are, your mileage may vary.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to your point about Baptists, yeah, like I really miss having potlucks. That's why, like, I would sometimes go to the Byzantine church near where I live in Kansas City,
Yep.
because they would always have a potluck after Divine Liturgy, and sometimes you have to make the community yourself. Sometimes you have to like find those opportunities. It impresses me because especially like on college campuses, I know that like for example, the parish that I went to during my undergrad, St. Isidore's, did a great job of this, but just at least for some of my friends who are out here in Massachusetts, some of the Protestant ministries, they're just so well coordinated that if you want to be in a Bible study, if you want a community, they like have the Excel spreadsheet all ready to go. Like it's incredible how they're able to really network and do that sort of community building. And so I think that we need to be willing to do the same thing within the Catholic Church itself. And I've recently seen comments like on Facebook and other places where people have said that like, yeah, like the Catholic community where I am just isn't really well formed or well developed. Like everyone goes to mass, after mass, everyone's gone, right? And that's it. And I think that's something that we really need to work on in the church, insofar as like, everyone has their different gifts, but everybody I think could have like pizza, beer, whatever, all the good stuff. I think that's
Yeah.
totally possible. Mhm.
Yeah. Long term. So that's what you can do short term. Long term, and I'm talking like generationally.
Yeah.
Get married, have lots of kids, raise your sons to be good priests that foster community. Or
My
if
only
you're
answer,
single,
yeah.
or if you're single, get into the seminary, discern a vocation, and if that is your vocation, become a priest, foster community.
Mm. My only answer to that is based. All right. Only Love says, is Acts 17:23 a good argument? Okay. To prove Muslims
Got 'em.
profess to worship the one true God, or what's a better argument to use? I hope I'm not changing the topic. Thank you. God bless. Okay, let me pull up Acts 17:23. Let's see here. That month.
I see only
Oh,
love.
okay.
You're basically going saying, "Oh, hey Kyle, hey, thanks for coming, buddy. Could you stand? Could you get out of the way, please?"
Yeah, okay. So this is when like Paul is, I think this is when he's on when Paul is discussing, the unknown God, and he has like the shrines of other gods around him. And just to quote Acts 17:23, for while I was passing through and examining the objects of worship, I also found an altar with this inscription, to an unknown God. Therefore, what you worship in ignorance, this I proclaim to you. So I think it's kind of difficult to, I don't know how you would apply this. I mean, maybe you could apply it to Muslims in terms of by analogy, right? There's a similar situation that the Greeks and the Muslims are in terms of like, but here's the thing, like this is gonna open a can of worms that I'm not trying to open the can right now. So is it a good argument? No, because I don't think it actually deals with everything that's relevant for that conversation between Catholics and Muslims on the nature of God and the God that we worship. You could because, in the case of the Greeks, they if I remember properly, and if this is wrong, I'm open to correction, but it's that they were trying to cover all their bases. And so they had like their statues for their different gods. And then they said, just in case we missed anybody, here's the statue to the unknown God. And that's not quite the same situation that Muslims are in. And so I think we need to be careful about how we analogize what's going on in Acts 17:23 to the situation between Catholics and Muslims, um, or what's a better argument to use? Uh, so if you want a better argument for okay, well, okay, so that is going to open a can of worms, but I'll just say that I think there are better arguments than Acts 17:23 for Catholic Muslim dialogue. Um, yeah, I mean, there's a lot that I can say, but I don't want to open a can of worms, so I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Okay, David Supina says, "How should we be integrating the fact that we are able to have a conversation like this that we couldn't even have 30 years ago into a community? How should we integrate?"
I'm gonna be
Yeah,
honest. I don't really understand the question.
sure.
So and so David, forgive me, and you can hit me up on Discord later to try. Maybe we can try to talk this out later. But I I don't feel comfortable giving advice this granular in a platform this wide because a lot of that like conversational stuff, it has to be very broad when talking to a broad audience. You just use your best judgment whenever you're in the in this scenario, and either you do it right or you don't, and you apologize and you move on.
Yeah. All right, let me see here. David Supina says, Swan, are you interested in purchasing a $5,000 crack home in Steubenville? This is the comment that made me laugh a little bit earlier. So apparently
Yeah.
this is a well-known stereotype.
So David's in my Discord, and I recently stole it from another person that was in my Discord. That apparently one of her friends had a doormat, and it said in like the "Live, Laugh, Love" font. It's not a crack
Mhm.
house; it's a crack home.
That's
So, and then I
funny.
just kind of ripped that off, and it was just like, you can buy this $5,000 house, take it from a crack house, turn it into a crack home. And yeah, but there are $5,000 houses for sale here in Steubenville, and they are in extremely rough shape. Not sure if drugs have run out of them, but I wouldn't rule out that possibility.
Deuterocomical says, Kyle should just create a software that auto replies no you on those comments. The accusatory comments, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and you know what? Maybe with Chat GPT, I could actually do something like that.
Let's see here.
Thanks, Dom. I'm becoming a Calvinist because of Kyle. Thanks, Dom. If you're becoming a Calvinist, it's because God predestined you to be.
Let's see. Yeah, okay, yeah. Why is Kyle predestined to be the king of Catholic YouTube? Honestly, I
You
wouldn't be
know,
upset.
I would be, because if I became the king of Catholic YouTube, you guys would have to all, if you're not currently married, you would have to march straight into the seminary, become priests, and never cease to say masses for me daily in order to
Hmm.
keep my humility, where it needs to be, and not let me not have my head inflate to the size of Texas. So I actually have been kind of enjoying the fact that my channel's been kind of stalling, because it has been a wonderful uh, humility growing experience.
Hmm. New Gloff asks, Kyle, what are your thoughts on Exodus 90?
I'm going to decline that question.
Okay. The catechumen says, is there an ontological difference between the justification of Abraham in the Old Testament and the justification of Christians under the new covenant? Yeah, this is actually Kyle just walked out. This is such a I mean, honestly, I don't know. I don't think I've adequately explored this question. Um, I could see it going either way where you could say yes or you could say no. But yeah, maybe I shouldn't even comment on this. But I mean, if Abraham was ontologically justified in the Old Testament the same way that we're justified in the new covenant, then what you could say is that like the grace of Christ was also applied to Abraham thousands of years before the coming of Christ. I mean, and so it would be actually like not quite like the Immaculate Conception, but at least similar in terms of like the temporal causality of what was going on, where the merits of Christ were already being applied to the past. So I don't know. Actually, that's an interesting question. But I don't know if I'll say anything else further about that. Let's see if there are any other questions. Okay, so I think that's the last question that we have
I will
from the
go ahead
chat.
and I will go ahead and address the Exodus 90 thing because I didn't mean to like make it think like I hate them and I think they're stupid and no,
Uh-huh.
that's not it. Exodus 90, I do believe that the ascetic practices that they teach, that they promote is excellent. I know personally a lot of people who have benefited from doing that. Personally, especially whenever I did it like in 2021, that was a huge jumpstart to my faith. It really helped me through a lot of things that I was working with. I think it's a good program. I also believe that with the team that they have, they are both needing to and capable of making lots of improvements.
Hmm. All right. Well, Kyle, it's been a delight to have you on the channel again. And just before we end the show, I think I want to bring up the conference again. So if you could just talk about the conference really quick, and
Yeah.
I'll pull up the Google form and all that.
So hold on. Alexi in the chat just said, "Do some Calvinists consider themselves Catholics consider themselves Calvinists?" No, that was 100% a joke. I'm so sorry. That was 100% a joke. I apologize for any confusion that might have been caused. The Logos Project. Dom is a good friend, and actually, you know what? I'm going to throw him under the bus because it's a great segue. Dom's going to be at the conference. So 2024. It is July 12th through the 14th. That's a Friday. So we're going to get started Friday evening. Sunday, you go home. So, if you've worked the normal 9 to 5 job, chances are you could come to it without taking off any time out of work. What we're going to do is start on Friday. We're going to have one of the local priests here give a talk and try to kick us off, get everything started out right. And it is going to be, and then the next day is going to be kind of relaxed. We've got some of the local organizations here. Actually, one in particular, Nelson's, who you might know as Catholic to the Max, or if you've ever gone to any Catholic store and bought a framed print of something, they did it. They're going to be talking about some things that you can do as far as merchandising goes. Actually, make sure you're subscribed to my channel because I will be interviewing Mark Nelson, who is the guy behind that. He's also responsible for a lot of the revitalization in Steubenville. This guy is amazing. Dude, Jeremiah, you're in my Discord. You two were invited. Yes, you 100% were invited. And if you're not there, I'm going to come to Michigan and kidnap you, even though that's illegal in Minecraft. But anyway, no. So Mark Nelson, yeah, he runs a Catholic gift shop. Yeah, they do the Nutcracker Village here. They run Leonardo's, the coffee shop here. But also, this dude has been fighting for life since before any of us were born. The man literally met his wife in a jail cell because he was doing jail time for protesting against abortion. So, yeah, it's going to be a great time. We're going to have a whole bunch of creators around each other, face to face. There'll be plenty of times for collaboration. I don't want to commit to anybody to anything they haven't, but I'm going to try to get one of the local people that you would be familiar with to do like a 1-hour Q&A with us. As things develop, I'll be able to tell more, but it's going to be a great time. And for $25 plus travel, it's not going to be, it won't be money wasted. And I think moving forward, because it's probably going to be just a bunch of smaller creators, but we've got Braden here in the chat. Swan, we've got you here wherever. I don't know how this is mirroring. We've got you who are kind of these up and comers. So how awesome would it be? I know you and Braden have already spent quite a bit of time together in person, like at my house and in a hotel. But how cool is it as you guys grow, as you do that, so does your friendship. And you continually do that. So let's say you say something dumb and Braden goes, "Oh, I'm going to get that Swan guy." But then he can just call back and think, "Well, but, Swan did say this, but, man, maybe I should just call him first, because I know from all those times that I've had a beer with him or something, I know that, there must be something to it, and
Mhm.
it's just to build that fraternity, build that love, and ultimately make us stronger, make us more unified, so that way we can be more effective in carrying out the Great Commission.
Yeah. And Kyle, I don't know if I told you this, but I do plan on coming. So that
Okay,
is my plan. I
awesome.
hope to make it. I think I can.
Okay, so okay, there it is. There it is. There's your big name. Once again, I don't know how this is being mirrored. Um, there's your big name guy there. Come on out. If you're a creator, come see Swan, and we'll do that. I promise you, he's much bigger in real life.
Oh man. Well, uh you might be disappointed once you meet me.
It's okay. I'm only like 5'3", so.
Oh my gosh. Look at this what the catechumen said. He's small. Man, it was so funny. I met a fan when okay, I'll close with this story. I met a fan like when I was entering the order, the Dominican order for just the novitiate. I met this other guy, this other novice, and he's like, "I thought you'd be taller" when he met me.
I've always gotten the exact opposite, but yeah.
That's
And Braden, the catechumen's the exact opposite too. Like he's a little taller than I am, and I'm 6'2". So yeah, Braden
hallelujah.
was a
This
lot taller than I expected him to be.
Oh yeah, Braden's a total Chad. He's a total Chad. Six like yeah, they I don't know. I know that you're like six something. I know that Braden's like 7'10" from what I last remember. Uh and then Hallelujah said Swan is the Asian Scott Hahn. Changed my mind. That's so freaking funny. And then James just said Swan's a short king. I appreciate all the nice comments. Thank you.
Scott
All right.
Swan.
Scott Swan, that's right. All right, well, thank you, Kyle, for joining me, and thank you all for on the live stream for joining me as well. Man, it just means a lot. And this conversation was very wholesome. I feel very rejuvenated.
Okay, alrighty. Well, hey, and hey, come subscribe to my channel. It doesn't help me in humility.